My father stood there, arms crossed, while my brother-in-law beat me in my own living room. And he didn't move. Not to stop him, not to help me. Just stood there like I was some stranger bleeding on his floor. That was the moment I realized something terrifying. To them, I wasn't family. I was a resource, a bank account they hadn't finished draining. But instead of screaming, I smiled. Because I had something they didn't know about. A plan, a long game, and I promise you, not one of them saw it coming. So yeah, let me rewind. I'm Ethan Cole, 38 years old, CFO at a mid-sized fintech firm in Boston. Every week, I move more than $4 billion of other people's money. And yet somehow, I was still the weak one in my family. Funny, right? See, I didn't come from wealth. My mom passed when I was 10. Cancer. Quick. Unforgiving. And when she was gone, everything shifted. My dad clung to my sister like she was the only thing left he could love. Her name's Fiona. Back then, she was 15, and yeah, it was hard on both of us. But where I grieved quietly, Fiona turned it into power. She became the center of his world. His golden girl. It didn't matter how many straight A's I brought home. Fiona could trip over her shoelaces, and he'd call her graceful. I became invisible. Background noise. And eventually, I learned to live like that. I built myself in the silence. No handouts, no college fund, just scholarships, late night shifts, and the quiet belief that if I worked hard enough, maybe, just maybe I could matter. And by 30, I had made it. Stable income, debt-free, owned a condo. Nothing flashy, but mine. A steady, quiet life built from scratch. But Fiona, Fiona floated. She changed college majors like socks, switched jobs every few months. She had that charming recklessness, like someone who always believed a safety net would magically appear. And that's when Gary showed up. Her boyfriend turned fiancé in just 6 months. One of those sales guys who thinks charisma is a business model. Talked big about passive income, market gaps, and opportunity zones. But the only thing consistent about Gary was that he never actually built anything. And yet, my dad adored him, because Gary knew exactly what to say. You raised a queen, he'd tell my dad, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. She deserves the world. And just like that, he was in. They got married fast. Moved into a townhouse that was, let's just say, aspirational. Fiona took a job at a boutique, mostly for the discounts. Gary bounced around from company to company, always one big break away from financial freedom. But every holiday dinner, he'd find a way to corner me, ask about my job, my condo, my salary, invasive stuff. Questions that felt less curious and more like calculations. And then Fiona started changing too. The sister who once loved thrift store treasures now cared about designer handbags and Maldives vacations. She started teasing me about my car. You know, for a guy your age, that thing's kind of embarrassing. She'd laugh. I'd smile back and think, yeah, but at least I don't lease my self-worth every month. Still, I kept the peace. Because deep down, I kept hoping that maybe, just maybe, they'd grow up. Figure it out. Stop living like Instagram influencers and start being real people again. I was wrong. Because what came next? Made every awkward dinner and passive-aggressive jab feel like foreplay. They invited me to dinner at Dad's house, just like old times, right? But the second I walked in, I could feel the tension. Fiona looked like she was about to make a campaign announcement. Gary was pouring drinks like a man who needed something. And my dad beaming. Like he was already proud of something I hadn't heard yet. Then Gary cleared his throat. "Ethan," he said, like a CEO addressing a boardroom, "we've been working on something. Something big." He leaned back like he just solved hunger and poverty. Fiona nodded, eyes wide. Dad smiled like it was Christmas morning. And then Gary said it. "We're opening a gym. Not just any gym. Of course, a lifestyle center. With a juice bar, spa, private trainers. A luxury experience in a town that already had 5 gyms. But whatever. That wasn't the part that mattered. The real punchline came when Gary said, "We just need one thing. The bank wants another guarantor." And right then, I knew what this dinner was really about. Not family, not support, not pride. It was a shakedown. They wanted me to co-sign a $500,000 loan. That's right, $500,000. For Gary's latest dream. A man who couldn't hold down a job for longer than 1 fiscal quarter now wanted me to put my financial future on the line. And when I said no politely, calmly, you'd think I had slapped my sister. But I didn't yell. I didn't rage. I just pushed my plate aside and said the one thing that broke the illusion. No, I told them the truth. That co-signing meant I'd be liable. That it could destroy my credit, my savings, my home. But instead of understanding, they turned on me. Fiona called me selfish. Gary accused me of being scared of success. And Dad. He looked at me like I'd committed treason. "Where's your loyalty?" he snapped. Loyalty. That word. It's funny how people only use it when they need something from you. That night, I left without dessert, without a goodbye. Just me, driving home in silence, knowing deep down, this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. They weren't done asking. They were just getting started. And they had no idea that I was done playing their game. After that dinner, something in me shifted, not just because they asked, not just because they turned on me the second I said no. It was the entitlement, the certainty in their eyes that I would cave, like it wasn't a request, it was a formality. But let me explain how we even got there. Because this wasn't just a one-time thing. This had been building for years. Fiona was always the favorite. After Mom died, Dad clung to her like a lifeline. She could do no wrong. If she failed, it was someone else's fault. If she succeeded, it was because she was gifted. Me, I could bring home perfect grades, win competitions, work myself into the ground, and I'd still get a grunt and a distracted good job. Son, I don't think he hated me. He just didn't see me. Not unless he needed something moved or fixed. I was the background kid. And when I left for college, it was all on me. Scholarships, part-time jobs, cafeteria food, shared dorms, broken air conditioning. But I made it work. And by the time I graduated, I had zero debt and a job waiting. Fiona. Meanwhile, she bounced around, changed majors twice, spent a year finding herself in Costa Rica. Dad covered it all, called it supporting her self-discovery. When I bought my first car outright, he said I was being cheap. When Fiona financed a luxury SUV she couldn't afford, he bragged about her taste. And then came Gary. I remember the first time I met him. Backyard barbecue. Big grin, loud laugh. He handed out business cards with nothing printed on them except his name and the word visionary. I thought it was a joke. It wasn't. Gary was one of those guys who talked like a motivational poster and smelled like commission breath. Always pitching something. Always on the verge of something big. Real estate, e-commerce, drop shipping, scooter rentals. And now, a luxury gym. When Fiona introduced him to the family, Dad practically handed him the keys to the kingdom. He'd laugh at every one of Gary's recycled TED Talk lines like it was stand-up comedy. He's a hustler, Dad would say. Reminds me of myself when I was younger. Spoiler alert. Dad worked the same warehouse job for 32 years and has never once taken a risk in his life. But that was the thing. Gary represented something Dad always wished he could have been: bold, risky, confident. So when Gary and Fiona got engaged 6 months later, nobody batted an eye. Except me. I watched them float from job to job, house to house, lifestyle to lifestyle. No stability, no plan. Just vibes. They moved into a townhouse in a transitional neighborhood, which is a polite way of saying overpriced and unfinished. Fiona got a job at a boutique clothing store downtown. Gary jumped into sales at a telecom company, commission only. Some months they ate steak, other months ramen and expired hummus. But every time we had a family dinner, Gary would ask about my job. How much you pull in a year now? Man, what's the equity like on your condo? You ever think about leveraging your assets? It wasn't curiosity, it was calculation. And Dad, he'd just sit there, smiling proudly. Like watching his son get interrogated about his finances was some sort of bonding moment. If I had asked questions like that growing up, I would have gotten grounded. But Gary was just being ambitious. The hypocrisy was exhausting. Still, I let it go because I was used to it. Used to being the one with boundaries. Used to being the one who kept his head down, who stayed quiet, who did the right thing. But here's what really broke the spell. Fiona changed. The same girl who used to make bracelets out of soda can tabs. Now she talked about energy alignment and manifesting abundance. She posted filtered photos of sunsets with captions like, "You attract what you believe you're worthy of." Meanwhile, Gary was blowing through money faster than he could make it. They started calling themselves entrepreneurs. Started hinting at partnership opportunities when we'd meet. Started talking to me like I was their future investor. And slowly, the mask started to slip. Fiona would comment on my lifestyle. "My God, Ethan, you're still living in that same condo, or you work too much. You should travel more. Money's meant to move." Gary once joked that I was the only CFO in Boston still driving a 10-year-old Honda. I smiled. Because that 10-year-old Honda, it was mine. No lease, no payments. Paid in full. And it got me where I needed to go. But they didn't care about ownership. They cared about appearance. They believed if you looked successful, you were. If you talked big enough, dreamed loud enough, and dressed like you made it, then you had. Meanwhile, I actually had. But since I didn't broadcast it, it didn't count to them. And then came that dinner, that pitch, that insult dressed as opportunity, that moment where they tried to package my life's work as a safety net for their fantasies. And when I said no, the real them showed up. Fiona, the golden child suddenly venomous, telling me I had failed Mom's memory, that I was supposed to take care of her after Mom died, that saying no was betrayal. Gary, he went full alpha, said I was weak, that real men take risks, that I'd regret not believing in them. And Dad, he said nothing. Then he said too much. Sometimes you have to take risks for family, he told me, like I hadn't already spent my whole life taking risks just to get out from under their shadow. That's when I realized they weren't asking, they were expecting, and my refusal, that wasn't a disagreement. It was a declaration of war. After that night, I figured they'd cool off. They'd lick their wounds, realize I wasn't just going to roll over, and maybe let it go. But people like Fiona and Gary don't take no as an answer. They hear not yet. They hear try harder. So they did. And that's when things got ugly. It started with texts, long ones, paragraphs stacked like guilt grenades. Fiona writing at midnight, telling me I was abandoning her, that I was letting Mom down, that I was supposed to protect her after Mom passed, that it was my job to take care of her. I stared at the screen, stunned. She really believed that, like my entire existence was meant to bankroll her mistakes. Then she pulled out the big guns. You were the reason she worked so hard. She wrote, you were the baby. You were her hope. And now you're throwing that away, throwing me away. You failed her. You're failing me. I didn't reply, because anything I said would just become fuel. Anything kind would be twisted. Anything firm would be attacked. But she wasn't done. Next came Gary. Except Gary didn't text. Gary showed up. At my job. I was walking into the lobby one morning, coffee in hand, headphones in, ready to start my day. And there he was, leaning against the reception desk in his tight blazer and smug little smile. My receptionist looked seconds away from calling security. Ethan, he said, loud enough for people to hear. Glad I caught you. He pulled out a folder like he was delivering legal documents. This is it, he said, flipping it open. Loan paperwork. All it needs is your signature. Then we're golden. I didn't even touch it. I just looked him in the eye. You've used the word just about a dozen times, I said. And the more you say it, the more I realize you don't understand what a contract actually is. His smile tightened. You'll regret this, he muttered. Just loud enough to sting. You're throwing away family. For what pride? No, I said, stepping past him. I'm refusing to carry someone else's fantasy on my back. There's a difference. He called me a loser under his breath as I walked away, loud enough for the receptionist to hear. She blinked at me like, that guy's related to you? All I could do was nod. Unfortunately. But the worst part wasn't Gary showing up. It was the fact that he felt entitled to, like this was normal. Like storming into someone's workplace was acceptable behavior when you didn't get your way. And if that wasn't enough, Fiona came next. But she didn't come with a text. She came with bills. She showed up at my apartment one evening. I was home, tired, still in work mode, and she knocked like she was on fire. I opened the door. She shoved her way in without waiting, dropped a stack of envelopes on my coffee table. What's this? I asked. Bills, she snapped. You're paying them. I blinked. Excuse me. You owe us this, she said, like it was obvious. After everything I've done for you, after Mom, after raising you half the time because Dad was too busy, you owe us. I picked up one of the envelopes. A credit card bill, $7,000. Louis Vuitton. Sephora. A vacation booking. I looked up. This really screams raising your baby brother. Fiona, I said. Funny. I don't remember needing a Gucci belt to get through algebra. She went red. You're such a selfish bastard, she hissed. No wonder Mom always liked me more. That one stung a little. I won't lie. But instead of snapping, I smiled. Cool. Calm. Then maybe. I said, ask Mom to co-sign the loan. Because I'm still not doing it. She stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. And that's when I knew. This wasn't going to stop on its own. They weren't going to let it die. They weren't going to walk away. They were escalating. So I did something I should have done months earlier. I called Tyler, my best friend since forever, now a lawyer. He listened to everything. The texts, the visits, the guilt. Gary showing up at work. Fiona barging in with bills like I was her personal ATM. And when I finished talking, he didn't say much. Just 5 words. Document all of it, everything. Screenshots, audio, times, dates, context. You're going to need proof, he said. When this blows up. And then he got quiet. Also, he added, don't ever let Gary corner you alone. That guy's one no away from doing something stupid. I thought he was exaggerating. I thought, sure. Gary's manipulative, but violent, no way. I was wrong. Because everything up to that point, the texts, the visits, the bills, that was just warm-up. The real fireworks came on a night I'll never forget. The night they all showed up. Not one at a time. Not with warning. All 3 of them. Together. Gary, Fiona, and my father. The trifecta of entitlement. Knocking like they owned the building. Pounding like they were collecting rent. And in that moment I knew. This wasn't about convincing me anymore. This was going to be a fight. You ever hear a knock at your door and just know it's bad news? Not because of who it is, but because of how it feels. The pounding wasn't polite. It wasn't even urgent. It was aggressive, like a warning. I checked the peephole. Gary, Fiona, and my dad. The full circus. I cracked the door but didn't open it wide. What do you want? I asked, already knowing the answer. Gary smirked. Funny you ask, he said. We're here to talk. And just like that. He shoved his shoulder into the door and barged in. Fiona behind him. Dad trailing like he was walking into a meeting, not a break-in. I stood there, stunned. They didn't ask. They didn't wait. They just acted like this was their space. Fiona dropped her purse on my kitchen counter like she lived there. You've been ignoring us, she snapped. No, I said calmly. I said no. And you don't get what that word means. Dad narrowed his eyes. Watch your tone. You don't talk to your sister like that. Oh, right, I said. Because she's the saint. The saint who drops bills on my table and tells me I owe her my future. Gary stepped forward, trying to keep his voice cool. Look, man, you've got the money. We know you do. You're just being difficult. Sign the papers, co-sign the loan, and we're done. Nobody has to keep hassling you. I stared at him, then repeated his words, slowly. So, you admit this is harassment? Fiona rolled her eyes. Stop acting like a victim. We're family. Family helps each other. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was insane. Funny definition of help, I said. I always thought help was voluntary. Not 3 people storming into my home demanding $500,000. That's when Gary's mask finally dropped. He stepped in close. Too close. I could smell the overpriced cologne. You're weak, he said. Always hiding behind your little savings account and your boring job. Guys like me build. You just sit in your box and pretend you're better than everyone else. I tilted my head, gave him a small smile. If being weak means not gambling away my future, then I'll take weak every day of the week. That's when he shoved me. Hard, not playful, not dramatic. Just full body shoved me onto my couch. I stumbled back, caught myself. But my heart was racing. I stood up, and Fiona came in like fire. Gary's right. She shouted, "You've always been a leech. Mom saw it. Dad sees it. You don't care about anyone but yourself." I looked at her, still catching my breath. "Yeah, then explain why the selfish one is the only one you run to when you're broke." That's when my dad stepped in, and not in the way you'd hope. He didn't pull Gary off me, didn't tell Fiona to stop yelling. He just glared at me. "You think you're smarter than us?" he growled. "You think just because you play it safe, you get to look down on your own family." Then he kicked me, not hard enough to break anything, but hard enough to shoot pain through my ribs. I froze, because in that moment, everything clicked. This wasn't just desperation. This wasn't just frustration. They didn't see me as a person. They saw me as a solution, a financial institution with a pulse. Gary picked up the folder from the table and threw it in my lap. "Sign it," he barked, and we walk away. I looked down at the papers, then back up at them. Even if I wanted to sign, even if I pitied them, I couldn't, because none of them, not one, deserved that power. "You know what's funny," I said, voice shaking, but steady. "Even if I wanted to save you, I wouldn't. Because you're not worth it." Gary didn't like that. He swung, caught me across the jaw. My head snapped sideways. Pain buzzed through my teeth like a live wire. Before I could recover, Fiona screamed in my face. "Why do you insist on ruining this family? Why do you want to see us suffer?" I spit blood into a tissue, glared up at her. "Funny. I thought ruining this family was a team effort on your part." She lost it. Started slapping at me. Not coordinated, just wild rage. Gary shoved me again as I tried to stand. And Dad. He stood there, watching, not moving, not stopping anything. He even muttered, "If you just signed, none of this would be happening." I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe my own father would stand by while his daughter screamed. His son-in-law threw punches, and his only son bled on the carpet. But before anything else could happen, I heard a voice. "Yo, I brought chips. If you animals ate all the pizza rolls, we're fighting." Tyler, my best friend, my lawyer, my backup plan. He stepped 2 feet into the room and froze. His eyes scanned the chaos. Me, slumped on the couch. Gary's fist still clenched. Fiona mid-rant. Dad looming like a useless referee. The bag of chips hit the floor with a dull thud. "Well," he said, "this is definitely not Mario Kart night." Gary turned. "Who the hell are you?" Tyler blinked, then grinned. "Who am I? The guy whose evening you just ruined. And also, the guy who's about to sue you into the ground." He reached into his coat, pulled out his phone, hit record. Gary stepped back. Fiona shrieked, "This is family business. You have no right." Tyler smirked. "Family, lady. I just walked into an episode of Cops. And guess what? You just made it public. She tried to slap the phone out of his hand. He dodged it effortlessly. Nice try, he said. 0 points. Try again. Gary clenched his fists again. Tyler didn't flinch. Buddy, you just assaulted a licensed attorney in his natural habitat. You realize how dumb that is, right? You just handed me billable hours. On video. Dad finally moved. This is between my kids, he barked. Tyler tilted his head. Sure, except your kids are bleeding, screaming, and punching. This isn't family. This is criminal. He turned to me. You good? I nodded, winced. Mostly. Cool, he said. Time to shut this party down. He looked back at them. You have 10 seconds to leave, or I call the police and make you TikTok famous. Fiona laughed. You think anyone will believe you? Tyler grinned. They won't have to. They'll see it. He held up the phone. Recording. Bright red light blinking. Her face paled. Gary pulled her toward the door. Fuming. Still trying to puff his chest. Dad lingered the longest, looked at me like I'd committed a crime. Then he followed them out. The door slammed. Silence. Tyler called the police. Filed the report. Took photos of my bruises. Even pulled footage from the hallway cam. Everything. Documented. Labeled. Time-stamped. I collapsed onto the couch. He tossed me an ice pack. You look like a Picasso painting, he said. Also, we're going to burn them down. I smiled, because in that moment, everything changed. They wanted to play dirty. Fine. I could play smarter. And starting now, this wouldn't be about survival anymore. It would be about justice. And I was going to make damn sure they never saw it coming. Tyler wasn't joking when he said we'd burn them down. But this wasn't going to be a screaming match on the lawn. This wasn't rage. This was math, paperwork, timing, and we had all the tools we needed. That night, Tyler stayed at my place. He set his laptop on the coffee table like he was preparing to hack the Pentagon. All right, he said, cracking his knuckles. These clowns think yelling in fists work. Let's see how they do against court filings, evidence, and federal forms. Way scarier than Gary's cheap cologne and swing-and-miss punches. I smiled, jaw still swollen. You're enjoying this a little too much. He grinned back. You have no idea. Over the next few days, Tyler became a machine. He pulled property records, public court documents, corporate filings, tax records, social media posts, everything. And slowly, the full picture came together. Gary, our startup visionary. He wasn't just irresponsible. He was a fraud factory. Remember that scooter business he bragged about at every family dinner? Turns out he had taken out loans under the company name, and Dad had co-signed them, but the business defaulted. Now there were UCC liens, outstanding judgments, collections piling up in public record. Gary thought no one would ever dig that deep. But Tyler lives for this. And Fiona, Fiona was worse. Remember how she landed that marketing coordinator job? Well, Tyler ran a little experiment. He matched her Instagram posts, beach trips, spa days, retail hauls against her company's corporate card transactions. Guess what? They aligned perfectly. Same dates, same stores, same resorts. She's cooked, Tyler said. We send this to HR with documentation. She's gone. I nodded. And Dad? Tyler chuckled darkly. My favorite part. Your dad hasn't filed taxes properly in years. There are state tax liens already posted. He's been living off the radar financially. But now, with Gary's defaults tied to him, and what he did to you, we report everything. And we did. We reported Gary to the bank that issued the scooter loan. We filed a civil assault claim against him, attaching hospital records and hallway camera footage. We submitted anonymous tips to the State Revenue Department and the IRS about Dad's tax status. We delivered a report neatly organized and time-stamped to Fiona's HR team, complete with her expense fraud patterns and matching screenshots. It wasn't personal. It was paperwork. And within 2 weeks, the first domino fell. Gary's car gone, repossessed right off the street in broad daylight. Neighbor filmed the whole thing, posted it on Nextdoor, captioned it, "Somebody's dreams just got towed." Then came the lawsuit notice, filed in my name. Civil damages from the assault. Served at Gary's new job because, yes, we found it. He tried to post about it on Facebook. One of those vague, dramatic paragraphs. Some people will stab you in the back when you're down. Family is just a word. Loyalty's dead. Tyler. He shared the post, tagged the bank and the court clerk's office. Friendly reminder that public whining doesn't erase public debt. And Fiona, she got the call. Her HR team called her in. She thought it was about a promotion. Walked out 20 minutes later carrying a cardboard box. Company card canceled. Email disabled. Escorted by security. She showed up at my door the next day. Crying, not apologizing. Just screaming, "You ruined my life." I stood in the doorway, calm. "Nah," I said. "You ruined it one spa day at a time." She tried to slap me. Missed. Walked away sobbing. And Tyler nearly spit soda all over my couch when I told him that line. You actually said that he gasped. Man, I'm putting that on a t-shirt. But we weren't done. Because then came Dad. At first, silence. Then confusion. Then anger. And finally, desperation. He called from a prepaid phone. Said the IRS had frozen his accounts. Said the state had sent letters. Said he couldn't even pay his electric bill. "You need to fix this," he said. I leaned back in my chair. Put him on speaker. Tyler was sitting across from me, grinning. "Funny," I said, "when you showed up at my door with your fists. You didn't seem worried about my electricity." Dad didn't reply, just heavy breathing. And then a click. Call ended. Tyler raised his soda. "To poetic justice," he said. I clinked my water bottle against it. But there was one more piece. One last card to play. And it came from someone I didn't expect. My grandfather. He called me a week later. Said we needed to talk. Now. Grandpa's always been quiet. Present. But distant. After Mom died. He stayed in the background, maybe thinking Dad had it handled. Clearly, he was wrong. When I arrived at his house, he was sitting at the kitchen table. Calm. Serious. There was a folder on the table. He slid it across to me. "This," he said, "is the deed to the house your father lives in. It's been in my name the whole time. He never owned it. I let him live there after your mom died. But after what he did to you, that ends now." I blinked. "You're giving it to me." He nodded. "Effective immediately. You'll be on the title by Friday. They'll get 30 days notice. After that, they're out." I couldn't speak. Not at first. "Grandpa, are you sure?" He met my eyes. "Your mother would have wanted this. You've carried yourself with strength and integrity. They chose entitlement. You chose accountability. You deserve to stand on solid ground." And just like that, The final domino tipped. The eviction wasn't dramatic. No screaming, no cameras. Just a clean, legal notice served at noon. I didn't deliver it myself. Grandpa insisted on being there. He handed Dad the papers, calm, firm. "You've been served," he said. 30 days. That's more than you deserve." Dad's face turned red, like all the blood in his body had surged to the surface. "You can't do this," he barked. "This is my house. He's my son." Grandpa didn't flinch. "No, he's my grandson. And the only one who didn't treat family like a piggy bank." Gary stormed up the driveway, eyes wild. "You think this makes you strong?" he snarled at me. "You're hiding behind paperwork." I looked him dead in the eye. "Weak guys don't end up owning the roof over your head." Gary. He didn't have a comeback, just stood there, breathing heavy, helpless. Fiona sat on the porch, scrolling her phone like the world still owed her something. When she heard the word eviction, she threw it right onto the grass. "This is insane," she shrieked. "I built my career, I sacrificed for this family, and you're giving it all to him. He's done nothing." Grandpa turned to her. "You stole from your company to buy handbags and spa packages. You didn't sacrifice. You siphoned." That shut her up. For once, Fiona had no snark, just silence. They left without saying another word. And over the next few weeks, I watched the slow motion collapse. Gary moved into a basement apartment, barely furnished. Car long gone, job hanging by a thread. Fiona couch-hopped. Friends took her in until they got sick of her drama. Then she went begging to Grandpa. He told her to get a job like everyone else. Dad ended up with a distant cousin 2 counties over. No pride, no house, no golden child. And me, for the first time in my life, I was standing on solid ground. Not because I yelled louder, not because I fought dirtier, but because I stopped playing their game. They said I was weak. But when it came down to it, I was the only one still standing, looking back now. It almost feels like a story that happened to someone else, but it was real. Every bruise, every bill, every silent drive home after being called a disappointment by the people who were supposed to love me. There's something strange about surviving the storm. When you're in it, you just want the chaos to end. You think, if you can just hold your breath a little longer, you'll make it to the other side. But when the noise fades and the dust settles, you finally get space to look at the wreckage. I saw the truth. Family isn't who shares your last name. Family is who shows up when it matters and respects your boundaries when you say no. For years, I thought being loyal meant sacrificing myself, biting my tongue, writing checks I couldn't afford financially, emotionally, mentally. But loyalty isn't about rolling over. It's about showing up for the right reasons. Fiona, Gary, Dad, they never understood that. They mistook kindness for weakness. They thought I'd always say yes, no matter the cost. But when I finally said no, it didn't destroy me. It set me free. Now my home is quiet. No more surprise knocks at the door. No more guilt trips. No more late-night texts from people who only remember my number when they're desperate. Every so often, my phone lights up with Fiona's name, a new email, a plea. Sometimes, an apology buried beneath another request. I read them, but I don't reply. I've learned the hardest truth of all. Some people only come back to see if you've rebuilt the boundaries they worked so hard to break. Dad tried to call once, 2. Left a voicemail I still haven't listened to. Part of me thinks I should, but most of me knows there's nothing left to say. Gary. He's disappeared into the background noise. Last I heard, he was trying to start another business. Still pitching. Still looking for the next person to believe in his story. As for Grandpa, we have Sunday dinners now. Sometimes we sit in silence, just grateful for the peace. He tells me he's proud. That's all I ever really needed. Sometimes people ask if I regret how it all turned out, if I wish I'd handled things differently. And I tell them this. I wish it hadn't taken so much pain to find my voice, but I don't regret using it. I wish my family had chosen respect over entitlement, but I don't regret choosing myself for once. Because the day I stopped being their safety net was the day I finally learned to stand on my own. Maybe you're listening to this and seeing your own family in mine. Maybe you've been the quiet one, the peacemaker, the forgotten sibling holding everything together. Maybe you've been called selfish for simply protecting your peace. Let me tell you, you're not alone. You're not weak. You're not heartless. You're just done. And that's okay. So if this story feels familiar, drop your own in the comments. Tell me how you finally stood up, how you learned to say no, or maybe how you're still working up the courage to do it. If you felt every twist in this story, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories that cut deep and remind you you're not the only one fighting for a little respect. Because sometimes the people who say you're weak are the ones who are afraid of your strength. And the day you realize that is the day you finally get to start over. So here's to every quiet victory, every boundary built, every no that saved your soul. Thanks for listening, and remember, you don't have to be their hero, you just have to be your own.